All right, and we are live. Hello, everyone. My name is Ian, the part-time Dungeon Master, and I am joined today by Paul from Swordfall Dungeons and Dragons. He runs his own podcasts. Paul, why don't you talk a little bit about what you do?
Tales of Swordfall is a LGBTQIA friendly podcast that we just kind of push out Mondays through Fridays, twice a day, actually. We split everything up into 20-minute segments, so it's easy to listen to, and you can just, come back whenever you want. So even though we have 200 plus pieces of content, they're all relatively manageable. Like, we don't post 3-hour slogs or anything like that. We have two groups in one homebrewed fantasy world. The two campaigns are interconnected. It's really awesome. Listen to us, please.
So where all can they find Swordfall D&D?
Oh, I should probably actually mention that, huh? You can find us on YouTube, youtube.com/Tales of Swordfall. You can find us on Anchor, anchor.com/SwordfallDND. If you want to communicate with us, we're on Twitter, twitter.com. Well, no, whoops. At SwordfallDND. And we also have a Facebook page, which you can try to contact us through, which is facebook.com/SwordfallDND. We really try to make it easy for you guys to find us. And also on Anchor, if you look there, you can find us on the other site, links to the other sites like iTunes and I think there's someone pressure washing. Does that sound horrible?
Let me pause for a second. No, I don't really hear it, so.
Oh, thank Lord. Because it's vibrating my whole desk, and I'm like, what the heck? Alright, sorry about that.
It's not a stream unless we have something go wrong.
Yeah. If I don't have a cat jump in my lap, or a dog suddenly going berserk, or someone coming in and going, hey, did you do this yet? It's like,
No.
I'm kind of busy here.
No, I'm kind of jealous a little bit with the 200 plus videos. Then again, I guess you've been doing this a little bit longer than I have.
We've been doing it for about over a year, actually.
About the same for me. I guess because I don't break up my videos. I keep them in that 2.5 to 3 hour long slog podcasts instead of breaking them up into nice little bite sizes, which I keep saying, I'm going to do this, and then I end up not doing it. I'm like, damn it.
Yeah, I take the time to actually edit. So some people wouldn't consider us an actual play podcast, which I'm kind of what I take out is long pauses and people going, oh, my computer's messing up. So, you can stay immersed in the story without people complaining about Roll20 or, Windows updating.
Oh, good old Windows 10 deciding to ruin everything.
Yep.
I'm still battling that. It still wants to update every now and then. It's like, hey, the latest update didn't go through. It's like, really? I wonder why. Is it because you can't update correctly?
Yeah, what I hate is when the computer fully just slows down for no reason, and then you're like, okay, I'm just gonna restart it, see if everything's okay. It's like, oh, it wanted me to update all this time. Thanks.
I found sort of a temporary fix, which is essentially to set my Wi-Fi to meter connection, so that way it won't update.
I am hardwired in, so yeah.
I think it might still work for you, but I'm not sure. Even then, it's Windows 10. Windows, for the love of God, make updates that install correctly the first time.
And don't delete your data, and don't replace all your desktop icons and all that stuff.
Oh,
But,
so excuse me.
I was gonna
I was
say.
gonna say.
Well, I was gonna say let's talk about something that like doesn't require a computer most of the time, and D&D.
I was actually going to ask, since you've been doing Swordfall for, you said, about a year now, how much dungeon mastering experience do you actually have? Did you play D&D before you started your channel?
Oh yeah. So I was introduced to Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop games. God, when I was 7, and yeah, and now I'm in my mid-30s. So I'm not going to admit how long that's been because it just makes me feel old all the time. And yeah, so I've been playing, AD&D. I know I've played 3. I think I've played some 3.5. I've never touched 4 ever.
You didn't miss much.
I keep hearing that, and I'm like, I know there's some people who swear by it, but yeah, I can't find enough people who are like, yes, play 4 with us. Let's see. Also, I have experience in Shadowrun and Pathfinder, Apocalypse World. A few other things. Like I've played a lot of RPGs. I was even trying to create my own system at one point in my life. So I have a little experience.
A lot more than I do, because I've only been doing Dungeons and Dragons for about 9 years now. Going on
Cool.
9 years now. I actually started originally playing with a bunch of old military veterans who were playing first edition Dungeons and Dragons. Actually, no, they weren't playing first edition. They were playing OD&D. And they said there was a very big difference between OD&D and first edition, but I never really caught on as to what the difference was.
I find it fascinating the military actually has like a tabletop culture like in it, and and every military branch is a little different too, which it's just mind-boggling. Not enough people talk about that because I've met so many service people that people play D&D in the Navy just kind of pass the time when they can. I had a dude play with me once. So, little background to this. I was a little bit crazy, and I was doing a real life drop-in game, and so I ended up gaming with a lot of people. One of them was a person who just came back from active duty from the army. And they're like, yeah, I've been just trying to find someone to play D&D with. I'm like, well, it isn't that hard. But they were pretty cool, and apparently they had some, like, awesome adventures. I wish I could remember the story completely. And yeah. I'm just a little rambly. Sorry about that.
I know, it's fine. I do remember playing with not only them, but also a few other folks who have been in active service. And they said it's one of the few things that you get to do when you're out on deployment. And I remember one of my friends, when I was in college, he was, what did he do? Oh, he was a Marine, but he was an engineer. And he said there was nothing more fun than like losing your mini keys. So you had to use like nuts and bolts from the, the cars or something that you were working on that day as your minis for like monsters or where your characters are. It was all fun and games until someone decided to use a grenade for the dragon, and we're like, yeah, you know what? Maybe we should just limit it to non-deadly things.
Yeah, I mean, I like my fantasy not to be lethal to myself.
But yeah, I mean, to each their own, I guess. Someone's like, I need something terrifying for a dragon. All right, here's a grenade.
An active grenade, yeah. Um, I think one of the more interesting people I've encountered who, I was just talking Dungeons and Dragons with was they were from Guam. And they were talking about when they were a little kid, or not a little kid, like just younger, they ended up getting into D&D, but there's not really any game shops around, like, back then. And so they ended up making their own paper dice.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that was super interesting.
I would actually be kind of interested in see how they did that.
Yeah,
Because I recently started trying to make my own dice, and I'm using resin, and it is a sticky mess.
I bet. I mean, so how do you do it? Like, is it like an oven thing, or do you have to like boil it on the stove and then like pour it in a mold, or?
Well, the mold itself is a silicone mold that you can buy from like Hobby Lobby or most craft stores. It's a excuse me. It's the initial part's like a glue, a silicone glue, and then you add a hardener to it. But even then, it's
Mhm.
still like rubber. And essentially, once I get everything mixed up, I drop a dice into it, say a D20 into it, and I let it solidify around it and cure around it. And
Mhm.
to help speed that up, I'll put it in front of the heater or I'll stick it in the oven for like 150 to 170 degrees for about an hour or two. And then uh, once once it's solidified enough, I can, pull the dice out without destroying the mold. And then the only side that's blank is the one side. And
Yeah.
then for the resin itself, it's essentially two chemicals in two bottles that you pour together. And I learned you want to slowly mix it together because if you try and like whisk it like you're making eggs, it's going to put a lot of air bubbles into it and it's going to ruin the dice. So,
Yep. And since you are, I'm guessing the mold's a little bit more cased than normal molds, right?
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. I know. I don't know if this works for all resin molds, but I know that a trick that some miniature makers use, especially when they're using fake water, is to breathe on it because the carbon dioxide actually breaks up the surface tension.
Hmm. That does sound interesting. I'm gonna have to look into that because that would definitely
Yeah.
help get rid of some of the bubbles. Because even though like you still slowly mix, there's still a possibility of one or two bubbles still being there. I had one because I decided to throw a couple of the dice, actually just one of the dice, into the oven to try and cure it for a little more. And it had an air bubble in it that exploded, and so it ended up taking out a whole chunk of the dice.
Oh,
And I was
wow.
like, "Wow, I learned something new. Don't do that."
Yeah. If I had the room right now, I think trying to make my own dice would be fascinating.
Um, but thankfully, the third attempt that I made, it came out perfectly fine. Glows in the dark lightly, not as much as I hoped, but it does. And because I learned you can add just like you only want a couple of drops of acrylic paint. I
Hmm.
do mean like only like a couple of drops in order
Or
to
or it will
dye
start,
the.
or it starts smoking. I've heard.
I'm not sure about smoking, but it will definitely imbalance the resin, and I don't want to see how that turns out.
Yeah, it's either resin or oh gosh, what is the other clear plastic stuff? I know it's one of the chemicals that if you add a certain kind of dye or paint to, I think it's acrylic paints, the chemical reaction will actually start speeding up to the point where it starts burning and smoking. And I'm like,
Ooh.
ooh. Yeah.
Never mind. I don't want to touch that.
Uh, yeah, I watch a lot of like terrain making programs and stuff. Even though I don't do it myself, I just find it really fascinating that people are taking the time to make all these like intricate like table settings
Hmm. I think I remember seeing one at one hobby store that was essentially like 2 tables big,
Uh-huh.
and I was like, "Man, that's a really intricate D&D map." And they're like, "That? No, that's just trains." So I'm like, "What?" And I got closer, and it was literally just a huge train track going around with
Yep.
like hand painted houses, cars, little people, and a water tower and everything. And I'm like, holy crap! How long does this take?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, better part of a year.
I know it's crazy what like you can do for both model railroad and for wargaming and D&D, because most, like, I found out the hard way that everything's like slightly a different scale, especially for miniatures and stuff, because you have uh, different scales for railroad. So like O N H N O, and I think there's another one, and I think O and N are some of the biggest. And if you want to match up like anything with the, I think it's 38 centimeter epic style D&D miniatures that commonly are sold, I think you have to use in scale, in scale stuff to kind of like match, but like nothing like actually matches, because in D&D and miniatures, like there's no like universal like scale.
Yeah, it's more of like as long as it fits within a single 1 inch square, it's pretty much
Yeah,
golden.
yeah, and it could be as tall as it wants, and but like with the model railroad, like they are super, like they're kind of strict on like how tall and everything is, because everything's like a 1 to whatever scale. And I just find it fascinating watching some of these people make like almost realistic housings or lighthouses. Or I've seen one guy basically make like this little terrain space, but it's like a water with like a sewer grate, and like the static grass and all this other stuff. I'm just like, wow, I would
Why can't I
love
do
to
that?
do. Yeah, why can't I do that? Oh yeah, because it takes a lot of time.
And I do not have that patience.
Yeah,
Oh,
but like some of the toys look kind of fun. Like the static grass, they have this thing that creates a basically static electricity that you pepper the like fake grass onto, and the grass like stands up from whatever you glue it on, and it's kind of cool.
hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I would do well with doing that. Oh, and then a lot of like creativity goes into making maps on their own, and
Oh gosh, yeah.
like just the world map on itself. You have to think of a lot of things, but the idea of like I'm gonna build something that represents the area. I'm so glad for like module dungeon tiles and everything
Hmm.
because those those help. But at the same time, like there's some that are like really big and complex. I'm like, you get one use out of this probably, maybe two or three. But for the most part, it's going to be like you use it once and then you're going to set it aside, and it's a wall piece for now.
Yeah. Like, do you know the guy on Twitter? Stephen Joy, or is it Stefan? I'm not sure. It's either Stephen or Stefan Joy.
I think so. I'm bad with names.
Yeah. He's a map maker, and he makes some wonderful, wonderful like maps. Um, and I love his stuff, and they're like so like they're simple, but they're in that like simple but detailed way that it's like, man, I want to do that, but I'm a little too lazy.
My thing is, it's like it has to be modular to where I can like put it like take it apart and rearrange it and put it back together, and it'll be something new and different. Otherwise, I'm not going to get enough uses out of it to justify making it or
Oh yeah,
buying it. So it's like,
yeah,
oh man.
exactly. I have at least, oh gosh, 4 different battle maps that I used to use all the time for real gaming. Like I don't have many like offline groups anymore, but I have like 2 large battle maps that I used to use constantly, and I helped kickstart a project where somebody had maps where you could make the isometric maps, and they are super cool.
The idea of being able to make my own maps is actually what got me into learning a bit about cartography and how everything works. Um, and it's really kind of like a Zen thing for me at this point to just be able to sit down and draw out a map of an area and know that I'll probably use this later, or I'll give this to someone who'll make very good use of it. So
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I like making maps, and I haven't like hand drawn a map in forever. Um, like I'm usually pretty amazed when I look at people like Devin Rue. She has some of the most insane maps. She's a really good artist too, but like just watching her like put leaves on trees or just make a mountain range, I'm just like, oh man, kind of want to do that. And then once again, I think the laziness factor kind of like scales in, because I only want to do so much to like play my game. I don't want to have to like work and sweat hard and like basically have a like full-time job on top of whatever I want to do to just play Dungeons and Dragons or whatever I'm doing.
yeah. Hello, Lunalif, or Shiloh, as I better know you as,
Oh,
player of
Shiloh,
Tulip. Yep, she plays Tulip in my campaign,
that's
the sassy
awesome.
halfling bard. Uh, but yeah, I think for like the map for Suriskin campaign, the main continent is named Gant. I've probably redrawn that map at least 30 or 40 times before I settled on what it currently is. Because I constantly think it's like, no, this one kingdom's too big compared to the other ones, or no, this one just shouldn't be sharing a border with that one because of whatever reason, and so on. So I constantly redraw it and draw it again until I finally settled on what I've got it at. And I don't know, it's been interesting, but at the same time, every now and then I'll look at the map and I was like, maybe I should redraw it again.
Yeah, like I understand that. Like doing a project and then stopping yourself and being like, okay, this is the final form. I'm not going to touch it ever again. And I'm like this with all my art, where I'm just like, okay, cool, I've inked it and it's done, and it's in the perfect state of what. Oh, I see something I want to change. You know.
Or it's like, now I hate it and I want to start over.
Yeah, I'm just gonna trash it. But it took you 20 hours. Nope, this is junk. Rip.
I've done that a number of times actually, because the Triscan world itself was a book for the longest time, and I've completed the book at least 3 times before I'm like, nope, I don't like it. I'm throwing it to the scrap bin. They're scrap notes now. I've like literally renamed them in my Google Drive to Scrap Notes 1, Scrap Notes 2, Scrap Notes 3.
Oh man. Yeah. like story stuff I have no problem with. It's definitely the maps and graphics and stuff. Like the Swordfall I prominently show on a lot of stuff. It took me about 4 or 5 different like tries before I'm like I was really happy with something. And yeah, I'm still very happy, but I'm like, no, I could make the space a little bit bigger. I want to like tweak it every so often, but I had to. I'm like, no, it's published. It's representing like what we have. I gotta just take my hands, put them up.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, Lunalith says making maps is so fun. I use Incarnate a lot. I use that a good bit for a while. The first map, Heldos, I made that with it, and the map of Lakeview. I don't know if I shared that one. But I used Incarnate for a bit until like it's like no matter how much I tried, I couldn't get it past to a certain point because it's like I'm using a mouse and a keyboard. I'm not using pen, and it's driving me nuts.
Yeah, and you have to remember to set like the mountains and stuff in a certain way, or you're gonna have like overlapping mountains.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh, what is the site that I use for like overworld maps? I'm trying to remember because it was something I was really satisfied with, and it was free. And and I found out the other day it's linked up to another site that I use all the time to make city maps. So it's just like, oh my god, I can make make this world map, set cities in it, and then just like click a simple command, and now I have a city map for this world. And I was just like, I think I was recording while I was discovering this, and everyone's like, "Are you okay, Paul?" I'm just like, "I'm so happy right now." Yeah, it's Asgar's fantasy map generator.
I think I've heard of them before.
Yeah, they're really nifty. I like them a lot. But yeah, with the whole like now you can place a city and then make a map for that city using the oh gosh, that one fantasy city generator that's been popular recently. It's like it blows my mind.
So how often do you use like random generators for like treasure and stuff?
All the time. So I kind of go with the lazy GM style of gaming. I have maybe a brief outline for every session. Like, okay, last time we had these plot threads just happening. And then I have maybe a list of hooks that are just floating around just in case something needs to be stirred up. But most of the time, I'm like, okay, you were doing this the last time. This needs to be finished. What are you guys going to do? And then I just let the players kind of run around and plot happens, apparently. So I've been extremely lucky most of the time with that.
Plot just happens.
Plot just happens.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, once you peel back the onion that is Tales of Swordfall, you find out that there's kind of a empty shell that needs to be filled.
With caramel? No, that'd be worse. Caramel onions.
Oh, no, caramelized onions are awesome.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, they are. Pan-fried caramelized onions. Man, take a Walla Walla sweet onion, pan-fry it forever, get the caramelization, stick it on a hamburger. That's super good.
No.
Not an onion fan.
I like onions every now and then, and it really depends on like what it's in and how it's prepared. The same with pickles. I'm just not a big fan of them. It just really depends.
Oh, I totally understand about pickles, and I gag every time I'm like, I go to the chip aisle, and there is one brand, and they're like, hey, we got dill pickle flavored potato chips.
Uh,
Yeah, I'm exactly the same way. I'm just like, no.
People are
No.
weird. It's like those people that put pineapple on pizza.
Hey, I thought we said we weren't going to get political. Yeah,
I'm not saying things like, "Hey, let's send them all off to an island to where they can be weird together." I'm just saying, no, pineapple doesn't go on pizza.
Well, I actually have to fully agree with that. Yeah, there's just some things that you don't put on a pizza. Like, I don't see people putting whole hams on pizza, but that probably wouldn't stop someone.
That's true. You know, there's at least one foodie in every group who, in one way or another, brings food to the table, and it's like, you're eating that while we're playing. Really? I once had a player that brought like a Swiss and mushroom burger that they had made. I'm like, that smells so awful. Why are you eating that now? Couldn't you have eaten that before you got here?
Oh man, unfortunately, I probably would be that person. So I'm like, yeah, okay, we're gonna have an early morning game in person. You know what I want? I want sweet breakfast cheese and and crackers, and I'll drizzle honey on top of it. And people are like, "What are you doing? Why do you have a whole setup here?"
I think the worst I've done, because like for the long time, whenever I was in like an Indian game, I was the dungeon master. So like I'm sitting there eating like a breakfast biscuit. I know I had like a bunch of breakfast biscuits and like pancakes. And I'm sitting there eating them behind my dungeon master screen while my players like literally sat there and planned out how they were going to take over a town.
Hey,
And I didn't stop them. I was
that's
just
how that's how you do it, though. I mean, sometimes you just need to let your players do their own thing, and if it's like, okay, I'm gonna eat my breakfast, you do you, and then come back to me once I'm done with my breakfast.
like afterwards, because like I ended up like finishing my pancakes and I still had like 3 biscuits left. And I'm like, are you guys done yet? And it's like, from now on, if you have like plans and so on, write them outside of the session. All of you sign off on it saying like, hey, this is what we agree on, and then give it to me and I'll, sign off on parts that I agree with and other parts I don't. And we just kind of like streamlined a lot. Like buying in that game, in that campaign, did not exist. Like them having to buy upgraded equipment, there was none of that. It was purely it's like, what items do you want? Tell me how many of the items you want, how much gold you have, and how much gold you're willing to spend to get those items.
And that sounds like a pretty efficient system, actually.
Yeah, and so like there was a lot less of like, them having to stop and haggle with every shopkeeper for something. It only happened like 1 or 2 other times, and that was because they were like really low on money, and they were like, we really need this though. So, yeah.
Yeah. I really like shopping montages and role playing that kind of shenanigans. So unfortunately, I really like to role play that stuff and kind of like probably make it a bit longer than it has to be.
Oh, which reminds me, I don't know if Luna's still listening or if anyone else from my campaign is listening. I cut it out of one of the sessions of like a literal hour of them shopping, going like from door to door, from like magic vendor to another magic vendor and so on, because it's like this is such a hectic mess. But like I didn't tell them about it, and if they listen to this they'll find out. is essentially because they sold off two of the stakes that they got from the Lady of the Forest. They actually sold off legendary artifacts.
Oh God.
So they got way underpaid because the guy did not give them like even a quarter of what they were worth.
Oh
And they
man.
had no idea.
Yeah, I've had that happen once or twice, where the it a character really wants something, and they're so hyper focused on it. They're like, yeah, let's make a barter or trade. Here, have this item, which happens to be a legendary item, and like they get their plate mail or whatever that isn't as special.
Yeah. I was like, oh, well, I guess you win some, you lose some.
Yeah,
Oh,
I,
well.
I think the greatest story about shopping and getting obsessed with items is I was running a game. It wasn't D&D. It was a whole different system. I can't remember off the top of my head what it was. Might have been a homebrew one. But so the group went shopping, and one of the players was looking for throwing knives for their character. So I'm like, sure. And so I was trying to make these throwing knives sound like super fancy. They were imported. They were in a box, like a wooden box that was labeled, and they're like, "Oh, what do the words say?" I'm like, "You don't know. It's not in a language you can read." And that set off an event for about 4 or 5 sessions where this player was trying to find out what was written on the box because they thought it was something super special because I mentioned it. And basically, what was written on the box was the name of the country it was from. I could have made it something super special, but I was just like, no, it's like, I think I kept telling them, like, that doesn't matter. They were like, no, it matters because you mentioned it. I was like, no.
Oh, I think one of my best shopping things I've ever pulled on my players was the bargain bin of magical items.
Oh, God.
It's like it identifies as a staff of lightning, but if you use it, you turn into a lightning bolt and get thrown against your target.
Well, technically, that's a staff of lightning. It's just.
The ring of invisibility, once worn, and it's cursed, all of your clothes disappear.
Nice. That's a classic one.
The ring of squirrel. No, I'm sorry, the staff of squirrel. It summons a squirrel. You cannot command the squirrel. You can't do anything with the squirrel. If you kill it, it disappears. Just summons a squirrel.
I mean, it definitely a staff. Like, actually, I could see using that.
But yeah, well, some of my players at one point, they were convinced that they could find uses for every bargain bin item that they could buy. One was an immovable rod that, once activated, would not remove itself from your hand. Like, not only was it like suspended in air, but at the same time, you were stuck to it.
Oh, wow.
So they ended up using that one to choke a manticore.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm still like going back to my memory on that one. I'm like, how did I allow that to happen?
Yeah, I tend to make more vicious items. Like, they seem simple at first until you actually, like, start thinking about them. One of my games, there was a character obsessed with their friend, and they made a deal with a god to get that friend back. Unfortunately, this god was a god of delusions and a trickster god, so the best god to make deals with, right? And So they just wanted their friend back. They got a snow globe. Their friend was in it. And the players started finding out a few things like, oh, hey, I can actually um, cast a mage hand inside this snow globe, and there were, I think, one of the other portal spells they could actually put stuff into there, and they never got up the courage. But I'm like, you could Misty step in there. Go ahead. And yeah, that never happened. But I think the consequences of them doing that is if they didn't pass certain wisdom checks, they would forget that A, it's a snow globe, and B, they would be in a perpetual time loop. Yeah. Kind of a nasty thing.
I remember one mace that one of the players bought. He named it the Mace of Echoing Lights because whenever it hit twice. So it was like, cool, it's a mace that always crits. I'm like, yeah, for the most part. Until he rolled a natural 20, and he did all the damage to himself.
Ooh.
He then also proceeded to roll a nat 1 and do all the damage to himself times 2.
Ooh.
Yeah, and he's like, okay, I'm using my luck because he was a cleric of luck. And he was like, I am never rolling a 1 or a 20 while wielding this mace ever again.
Yeah, that's what they say.
But he's like, that thing is dangerous. On a 1, it almost killed me.
I always like making weapons that have area of effect thing on it whenever the person rolls a 20, because I love Dynasty Warriors and stuff like that. So I like giving players those type of weapons. So I had one where if the character rolled a 20, creatures within 20 feet would have to make I think it was a DC 15 Dex save, or they would be knocked prone. So that was useful. But on top of that, it would also cast Fireball at the origin of the person using the weapon. And yeah, their teammates were a little unhappy that they were using this weapon.
I imagine so.
Yeah. Once again, it was the same campaign where Trickster God was, making deals and giving them stuff. So, yeah, you can guess where they got that from.
Like they didn't learn the first time. So we're going to make another deal.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, okay. But I do find making deals with entities just I find it fun. I don't know if my players find it fun.
Oh, I can admit that at some points I have made some weapons and such that were either nasty towards the players or extremely helpful for the players if they got their hands on it. One of which was a mage hunter sword. Essentially, if it hit a spellcaster, the spellcaster had to succeed a wisdom check, and if they failed, they could not cast a spell for 1d4 rounds.
See,
so
if I made that, I would make a Constitution check. But that's just me.
You can easily change it to a Constitution. I guess it would kind of depend on what kind of weapon you got hit with.
Yeah. So in the blue group in Tales of Swordfall, Flea has just acquired a weapon. It's a bow made out of a green dragon's bone. So, as you would expect, it does poison damage to targets. But so as I said, I like to make weapons with area effect spells. So when he rolls a 20, it actually releases a poison cloud that's so many feet wide, and the cloud lingers there for I can't remember how many turns. It's like a round or something like that. Or no, I think it's a minute. Something like that. I would actually have to look at my notes. But it's one of those where if he's like shooting into like a fight, he's probably gonna get some allies with that.
I was gonna ask, it's like how many times has he poisoned an ally?
Oh, he just got it, so none right now. Yep.
I was about to say, is he gonna be a Steve and shoot into combat?
Well, yeah. I mean, he knows what it does, so hopefully he'll use it wisely.
Hopefully. Oh.
But even unwise things are just as fun to watch go down. So.
Well, that's true. I have to admit that there have been some parts where I've like sat there and watched my players make some of the worst decisions possible, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm not going to stop them. I'm just going to let them go right on ahead with this.
Yeah, a great example is I think it's the ninth episode of Tales of Swordfall. So we have the Purple Group. There's Horatio, the fast-talking bard, who's pretty much a shim-sham salesman. We have Elaine, the group mother, was just a badass character. Rayanne, she is a sorcerer and just troublesome. Still is. And then Norik, the kind of basic monk who's also a half-elf, so he's like super basic. So they were exploring this problem with this town that young maidens were getting up in the middle of the night and being attracted to the spooky woods. And all the locals warned all of them that the woods was a place you didn't want to cast magic because there were certain areas where like the fairies even made truce to not cast a magic in a certain area because it was kind of a neutral area, so like both the good aligned and evil aligned fairies could like do solstice celebrations and stuff like that. So they were told over and over again, don't cast magic. Bad things will happen. So they end up finding the area where the music was originating from, and the monster that was playing the instrument that was attracting the people, etc., etc. And so it was this creepy maze-like area with like brambles and all these stone monoliths that I described to the people who could actually use magic. Like, it felt like they were all siphoning magic and all that stuff. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. So this is probably the area we don't cast magic in. So, at this point, there was one group who was already at the area, and Horatio, our bard, had been jailed because he had been stealing grains of wheat from the farming community they were in. And so he was jailed overnight and then basically ran away from his labor into the woods to catch up with the group. And he came in, he went into the area, he noticed the same thing, and then decided to cast Identify on the stones.
Oh, hey, Sully. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, hey!
It's okay that you weren't here on time. We're still going, though, so that's the thing. So wait,
yeah.
Horatio, he was told as well not to cast magic there.
At least 3 or 4 times. Yeah, don't cast magic in the forest, especially in that weird place where all the fairies hang out. So naturally he was like, oh, there's weird magic stuff going on. Well, I'm going to cast Identify, and I think he did it as a ritual. So as soon as he touched one of the stones, I was like, cool. I'm going to roll from the Wild Magic Search table. Oh, yeah. So everyone was like gathered around watching Horatio, and they were like, don't do it, Horatio. And Horatio's like, whatever, I'm fine. Touches the rock. I roll the dice. And you can go back and actually listen to this. I audibly gasp because these are, I think they were only level 1 or 2. And I got the one wild magic thing that it casts fireball from the point of origin of the caster.
Oh boy.
So everyone but Rayanne were within the area where fireball hit, and it outright killed Lane. It outright killed Horatio. And Norik had been was knocked down to just 0. And it was one of those moments where it's like, wow, this couldn't have gone worse. But it was pretty fun. Yeah, I won't say much more because listen to Tales of Swordfall. We're really awesome.
Just killing yourselves early into the campaign.
Oh yeah. It was. I was pretty amazed. I was like, wow, this is for a moment, like, I thought it was going to be a TPK because everybody was like within, I think, 30 feet, except for Rayanne, who was like 1 space away or whatever. Like, she was just right outside of that area. Oh man.
Oh boy. Oh, that reminds me. I like my original Pathfinder group, which had Steve in it, of course, but
of course.
But every now and then, when he wasn't pissing me off, the group would come up with these very crazy ideas. So one part they were going into a tower, or they were actually in the tower, and the rogue had snuck up the stairs just enough. Salty Noah had snuck up the stairs just enough to peek up and see what was on the next floor. And he saw a big magical orb, kind of like a containment orb, holding essentially the book that they wanted, out of everyone's reach. And, patrolling around it was an ogre. And they're like, oh, crap. So he sneaks back down and he tells the rest of the group. So Steve and Phantasmio, the flame wizard, came up with the bright idea that Phantasmio should use his affectionately called Staff of Mortifier. It was a staff of fireballs that he essentially just constantly used to cast fireball to shell areas with mortar fire, and blow the floor out from underneath the ogre and the containment cell in an enclosed space. And Steve was convinced this would work. Phantasmio was like, well, I'm playing a crazy character. Like, his character's flaw was that he was slightly deranged. So it's sounding even like a greater idea to him. And Salty Noah was like, no, don't. What is wrong with you?
Is Pathfinder where if you cast fireball in smaller spaces, it will actually reflect damage?
I'm not entirely sure now that I think about it because it's been so long since I played Pathfinder.
Or was that
But
AD&D?
I do know that in older editions, I want to say first or second edition, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Sully says that sounds like a great idea. It was not a great idea. They ended up not doing it, thankfully. But essentially, if they had done it, none of them had the room to essentially escape the blast radius. And they found other ways of fighting against the ogre. And then as far as like breaking open the magical containment thing for the book, they rolled it down the stairs until it broke at the very bottom of the tower.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, I do like when players think a little outside of the box and like, they could probably use some like dispel or whatever, but every once in a while you just have to roll something down the stairs until it breaks, and if that works, it works.
That same group also, Phantasmio again, caught me. He got me good. And it was eventually Phantasmio became the sane one of the group. And that was the weird part. That the flame wizard who sets himself on fire for fun is the one who's mentally sane. Okay, gotcha. But they were essentially sneaking into a covenant of wizards and witches and such. Again, to steal another one of those magical forbidden knowledge books that they needed. And he ran into two of the wizards who were arguing as to what they should do with the book. And they're like literally fighting over the book. Like both of them have hands on it, trying to pull it from each other. And Phantasmia goes, "You fools, you have no idea what you're doing." I slap both of them and I take the book from them. Let me see that. I'll show you what you can really do with it. And I'm like, okay. They kind of like stand at you shocked, like, who are you and what? And he's like, I run away. I'm like, what? He's like, I run away. I was like, okay, no, you got me. You get at least like 2 rounds worth of dash distance away from them before they realize what you're doing, and then they chase after you.
That's pretty awesome, actually.
It's like you got me for that one.
Yeah, I have had a few solutions where running away was just the best one. It's just like, what are we gonna do in this situation? We fight until death. No, guys, we're just gonna run away right now. Yeah, I had a group basically do that. They went into an underdark situation, found a beholder. It was the only way between them and their exit. Luckily, almost everyone had Misty Step, and they're like, "No, I just use Misty Step and run away." I'm like, "Really?" They're like, "Yeah." I can't remember how everybody got Misty Step, but I think it was like race traits and magic, because there was like 2 magic users, and can't remember what the other person was. Might have been a cleric for all I know. But they're like, yeah, I'm gonna run away. I'm gonna use Misty Step. Not even gonna give this guy time of day. I'm like, come on, but it's just a beholder. You guys are like level 7. You should be able to handle it. They're like, no, dude. Nope.
It's just a beholder. Since I did that video on beholders, my players are like, so is this when he throws one at us?
Oh yeah, gotta love it when.
Don't tempt me.
Yeah, that's kind of why I don't want to do like tip shows or anything, because it's like, okay, are my players going to think I'm going to do this next because I'm like talking about it?
But think about it, it's like you've got a lot of experience playing Dungeons and Dragons, so you probably have like somewhere reading around in that head of yours ideas that other people would not have thought of, or might inspire other peoples to use something in their campaigns. Which is the whole reason why I do the D20 Sunday in the Dungeon Master's Corner, is essentially to inspire someone to, why don't you try using this instead?
Yeah, I mean, I think I phrased that wrong, but yeah, I mean, inspiration is always good, and inspiring others to pick up and run a game is one of the fundamental things I wanted to do with the podcast that I'm doing. Because if I hear like someone just started listening to my podcast and thought that DMing would be fun, I'd be like, yeah, I've done a good job then.
So I got to say, in your many years of playing Dungeons and Dragons, how often have you been the dungeon master? Like, have you been the dungeon master more than you've been a player?
Yeah, yes, I have. I have been the dungeon master so many numerous times. Um, it first started out was I knew the rules. Um, especially in like junior high and high school, it was, oh, this guy knows the rules, so we're gonna make him the GM. Or when I was making homebrew systems, oh, this guy wrote the thing, he's gonna be the GM. But yeah, like I don't mind being the GM. I do like to play every once in a while, especially if it's a new system that I haven't touched before. I like playing it before I try to run it. And then, like right now, I'm playing the new 5th edition Legend of the Five Rings by Fantasy Flight Games. It's a pretty cool system. It's kind of like Star Wars, where it uses like the weird narrative dice instead of traditional dice to actually help you tell the story. And
I think I remember Legend of the Five Rings being a card game at some point.
it's been both actually. So the card game actually gained more popularity than the tabletop game after a while. But I think Fantasy Flight has the rights to both. I'm not quite sure, but I think it does. And I know they restarted the tabletop game because, well, I'm playing it. So, yeah, I've heard the trading card game is pretty awesome.
Sully says that she thinks it would be fun to Dungeon Master. It is fun. It's rewarding.
It is super fun when you have the right group and you have a good understanding of like what the group wants. When it can really suck when you have a group that just kind of want to do their own thing and you don't know how to, what's the word? Basically manage it. There are a few things with DMing that can end up sucking, like all those herding cat jokes. Some of them are actually true, but like I find that like 85% of the time, most people want to play a game and want a good story. And then, there's that like 3% out there that want to be Steve.
Unfortunately, you run into Steve, though.
Yeah, well, it's still a percentage. Like, I don't have many people that I can say have been, like, to that Steve level. And, quite frankly, I probably would have asked that dude, just leave. But, like, he owned all the books or something, so...
Yeah, so it's like I said, he owned all the books. If he didn't, I probably would have asked him to leave sooner.
Yeah. Well, if you let me, like, actually get my hands on the books, photocopier, that would have been my solution.
But I'm just a poor boy.
From your family.
Yeah. Now, here's one thing, and like I kind of understand it to an extent with like, yes, there's a percentage chance of running into a Steve or having one in your campaign. D&D is supposed to be inclusive of everyone, regardless of anything. So it's stressful to us as dungeon masters and also to the whole party when we have to kick someone out because it's like, look, you're being a dick. You're
Um,
not being a fun one either. You're just being a dick.
so a guy that I watch a lot, Adam Cobell, he has associated that DMing and playing D&D is a lot like dating someone, except you're dating multiple people. But a lot of the dynamics are kind of the same, especially with some of the emotional values and stuff. So kicking a player out is essentially like breaking up with them, and it can be really awkward. But if you take the right steps and you hope that both of you are at like the same maturity level, it can go fine. Like I've had to ask one or two people to leave, and not Swordfall yet, but hopefully not ever. But like in real life
Yeah.
games, I'm like, sorry, dude, this is not working out. You know, it's more me. It's not you. We're not exactly meshing. And yeah, it does sound like I'm breaking up, but like those are reasons why people just don't jive in some D&D groups is because they're not like meshing with either the person who's running it or like the actual group. And you know, if you want to be my player, you have to get along with my friends. Because I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want.
I was going to say, I swear to God, if we start doing song references,
It's already too late.
it is. But yeah, I really agree with. Oh, apparently so does Solely. The fact that when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons, you are in a way building a very strong relationship between yourself and your players, and hopefully themselves with you, because it takes a moniker of trust to run a campaign. If your players don't trust you, then you're having some problems. And yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
hello, artificially Catherine.
Oh, hello. Yeah, I agree with that statement. I mean, and also role playing itself in the nature, you are telling a narrative story, but also you are having an experience with other people that can run a little bit deeper than just like, oh yeah, I hit the dude and I kill him. Like some groups, I know Tales of Swordfall is like this, where we're a little bit more RP heavy, and we are not afraid to get into the feels. So, like our last session that aired, I believe. Ooh, is it the last session we aired? There will be a session sometime in the future where the feels get really strong and we delve into some of the characters' past, and even I was getting a little like teary-eyed near the end there because some of the stuff was like utterly tragic, and but it was like it was a good experience. Everybody had fun, even though like people were crying near the end.
Well, I remember from my first Pathfinder group, we didn't have that strong emotional thing because it was my first time being a full, real dungeon master. And there was their first times ever playing this kind of game. I do remember from my old D&D days, back when I played, OD&D first and second edition, that there were some of the very heartfelt moments. The cleric of one of the second edition group, he had an NPC that was with the group that his character loved and had very deep feelings for, and all of a sudden she, like, without warning, sacrificed herself to keep all of us alive. And that was like, he was heartbroken, and like he sagged behind the group, like on our travels back. And like he was upset. He was like, he wanted to at least bury her, but there was nothing left of her to bury. She was just gone completely. And
Wow.
yeah, and we had been traveling with this NPC for at least a year, and they were like an integral part of our group. They were a magic user hybrid class with, I want to say, cleric as well. But yeah, it was like, man, she's gone. And none of the others really wanted to say anything about it because some of them were like, it's just an NPC. But the rest of the group was like, man, this really sucks. This sucks way more than we thought it would. And the cleric himself, like, he got like really upset that he had to leave the table for like a good hour. And
Wow.
yeah, because he had spent so much time investing into the NPC's backstory and setting things
Hmm.
up, and then all of a sudden it was just gone in a puff of smoke. See, Artificially Catherine says, I'm in a D&D group that's going to do 2 campaigns at once because the side one, where we don't have one of the group members, we decided to do because we wanted to. It ties into the story. Oh, so that's kind of like having 2 campaigns running at the same time. I kind of do that with the Soriskin campaign. You do the same with your blue group and your purple group, if I recall
Um,
correctly.
Not exactly the same. So,
Well, more
it
of they
kind
take place in the same world,
of,
but
they take place in the same world at the same time, where both the groups, their causes and effects affect each other. But I have actually played a game where I've had like the main campaign group, and then depending on whoever showed up, they would actually play different characters and other like side quests and stuff like that. And that was super. It was super fun, but I had to be like on top of it with notes and making sure events actually lined up. So this was actually a real life game, and I literally made notes on a calendar in World to keep track of events that were happening with each and every group. Because I think the group variation was um, there were essentially like 4 different groups, but like
oh
some of the
god.
same players. Oh yeah, yeah, I get this crazy sometimes. And so there was the main group with I think all 5 players, and then there was a group that just had 3 of the players that show up like most of the time, and then a group of 4, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it all kind of led. This was actually what my real life dropping game kind of evolved into, uh, and it was pretty awesome because somehow I was able to control the narrative enough that there was like one giant event that basically every group ended up feeling. It was a destruction of a whole ancient dwarf town.
Wow.
Yeah, and so like uh, every group at this like certain time ended up like waking up in the middle of the night to a massive explosion, glass rattling, etc., because this old ancient dwarf town on top of this mesa got destroyed by a celestial being, and like everyone's like, "Wow, this was all connected this whole time." I'm like, "Yep."
Dang. I remember in the campaign that I played a temp character in, that dungeon master, he runs 2 campaigns, one on a Saturday and the other one on Sunday. And I remember like coming in for one of the Sunday games. It was actually the first one that I was joining. And suddenly he, describes the earth shaking and the sound of like something exploding could be heard. He said it was like, you remember the stories of like Krakatoa going off and could be heard around the world? That's what you hear. And I'm like, oh no. What had happened is that the Saturday group, they dropped a floating island into an active volcano and caused it to rupture. And it literally caused essentially a splitting of the continent itself. There's now these large gashes in the land where the continent has just split open from the volcano exploding and taking out a number of the mountains that was the land around it and everything. And I just remember sitting there and I'm thinking, what on earth did they do? And I ended up finding out later what happened. And I was like, dear God, how did you drop an entire island into an active volcano? The answer being that one of the players wanted to steal a levitation orb that was keeping the island up because he thought it would make their flying ship fly better.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we've been streaming for about an hour. So I know you only do this for a certain amount of time, and I just want to check how much time are you, because I could probably talk like for the rest of the day.
Well, honestly, I probably should get started cooking dinner.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I thank you very much, Paul, for joining me. Solely, artificially, Catherine, Luna, if you're still with us, and everyone else who has decided to pop in for this stream. It will be replayed again in much better quality on my YouTube channel once I upload it there. And Paul, once again, why don't you tell us where everyone can find you, as well as Swordfall D&D, or Tales of Swordfall?
Yep. So I am Paul. I am the GM and crazy madman behind Tales of Swordfall. If you want to follow me personally on Twitter, I tweet mostly about cute puppies and D&D and other nerdy stuff. And you can find me on Twitter at Paul_Garish. That's at PAUL_GERRISH. And, Tales of Swordfall, you can find them on Twitter at Swordfall D&D. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/SwordfallDND. We do have a YouTube channel where we put a lot of our, everything, which is youtube.com/Tales of Swordfall. And we have an Anchor page, which also connects to our iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Radio Public, etc., etc., etc. All those good podcasting sites. You can find that at anchor.fm/SwordfallDND. Check us out. In the descriptions of most of the videos, we have a Discord channel, and if you end up liking what you hear, join our Discord. Blah, 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 blah. But in the meantime, I think Ian you have a Patreon now, right?
That's true. I finally decided to bite the bullet and started a Patreon. There are some other links also if you want to support. You can buy me a coffee. Dear God, do I need it? Because it is my lifeblood and how I function every day. Without coffee, I have no sanity. As well as there's a few merch options down in the descriptions below. If you want to buy a nice comfy t-shirt, I'm actually wearing it right now. I should probably take a picture of that at some point. That's pretty much it. I probably should work more on marketing myself.
Just a little. I mean, just ask people every once in a while at the end of your videos. But you're getting big when you can ask like at least 3 or 4 times throughout your whole stream, and people will do it.
Here's to hoping.
Yeah, here's to hoping.
Thank you everyone for joining us for the stream. We hope you have a wonderful evening, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
And we're free.
Let me turn off the Gregbot.
You're gonna have to send me the recording link.